Are you curious about what sustainable fashion really is and why is it such a buzzword these days? Well, I'm going to break it down to you in 5 simple ways to tell you exactly what sustainable fashion is and isn't. Hello, my name is Miriam Keegan and I am a Fulbright student here in the USA from Ireland studying, that is exactly, sustainable fashion. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe and hit the bell button to be notified when my next video is up. I post a new video every week about fashion, working in the fashion industry, and most importantly, sustainability. By bringing everyone on my journey, I have helped hundreds of people so far to change their habits when it comes to sustainable fashion through online courses, community challenges, and just having the chats. Oh, and I love to sew. Definitely expect to see that on my channel too. Sustainable fashion, I feel, became such a big buzzword in like 2020, and it's really hard to really technically define it. So we're going to break it down to see what are the different aspects that can allow brands to label themselves as sustainable. There's so many synonyms for sustainable fashion these days. So if you've heard terms like fair trade fashion, slow fashion, conscious fashion, circular fashion and eco fashion, then you're on the right track. According to a study in the Journal of Fashion Marketing and Management, sustainable fashion is comprised of local sourcing and production, transparency across the supply chain, traceability of work process and raw materials, environmentally friendly raw materials, safe working conditions, and fair wages. Whoa, that's a lot of things to consider when you're trying to label your brand sustainable fashion. So let's break it down what these kind of really mean. So there's 5 main real terms that can be branches of sustainable fashion. It's not exhaustive, there's definitely lots of more, but these are, to me, are the most important ones from what I've studied so far. Whether you're buying from a sustainable fashion brand or actually a designer yourself, these things are so important to consider when you're going down the sustainable fashion route. For example, having your clothing made environmentally friendly. 1 garbage truck of textiles is dumped into a landfill every single second. So you can imagine the amount of textile waste that we are dealing with here. It is chronic. So when you're labeling a brand sustainable, you have to consider the environmental impacts that it's going to have. This includes how much water consumption that your brand is using to make your clothes. Like, for example, to create a pair of jeans or denims, you need like 7,000 liters of water to create 1 pair of jeans. Mind-blowing. That's enough water for, I think, maybe 3 years for someone to consume. It's a massive amount of water. These are like environmental things we all have to consider when we're either buying it or actually creating fashion. We also have to think about the dyes that we're using. A lot of the dyes that are in our clothing are actually toxic. While we do have lots of laws preventing these being brought into, like, let's say the EU or America, the problem is that a lot of these dyes are used in countries that don't have these regulations, so sometimes it can go unnoticed, some of the dyes that are being put into our clothing. So that's something we have to be really, really mindful about. Also, these dyes can be put into the water systems, and if you've seen pictures from like Indonesia, you'll see that the dyes are like completely changing the color of the water system there, which is really, really bad, obviously. Crops are also over cultivated completely, and the use of pesticides for especially cotton are a big danger to our environment too. So we have to really, really be careful that we're choosing brands that are using, you know, organic cotton, or at least regenerating some of the cotton that they've used before for new projects. Just be careful though, even with organic cotton, it can be over cultivated, so we just have to be so mindful of what we're buying. The second thing that I think is so important when it comes to sustainable fashion is clothes that are ethically made. So that includes labor compliance and giving people fair and living wages. So there's such a huge debate between a fair wage, a living wage, and a minimum wage. And while it's not the same in Asia as it is in America or even in Ireland, you know, everyone has a basic living wage that they need to survive and to actually thrive as well. We can't just expect people to just have the bare minimum in life anymore. People deserve to have savings in their lives, to get out of debt, to be able to pay for education. Every single person deserves that. So it's so important that when you're looking at a sustainable fashion brand, that they are very clear that they are doing their mighty best to pay their workers, whether it is in the corporate world of their brand or in the manufacturing, that everybody is being paid a living wage. We saw with the Rana Plaza disaster how so many families were destroyed because of really squalid conditions for a garment factory. Since then, a lot has been done to try and improve these working conditions, but it's still not a guarantee even today. For consumers, it's actually so much easier for you to actually find out whether your brands that you love are complying with labor relations and for fair wages, because all you have to do is just type in that brand name and you'll see quickly if there's media coverage on them breaching these working conditions and just being very, very negligent towards their workers. You can see on Clean Clothes campaign, and especially Labour Behind the Label, they are very good at calling out the brands that are causing the most damage to people. Another thing now is conscious collections. Now, I don't mean you have to call your collection conscious, because we've seen that and it's got its issues. What I mean by having conscious collections is that you're not just churning out collections day after day, where we see with one brand they're churning out 5,000 new items a day on their website, which is terrifying. First of all, being able to create a collection based on something that comes from within and really has a message, not just for the sake of gaining profit and just keeping up sales. Of course, every business has to consider, you know, their profitability and their sales. That is like absolutely so important, but at the end of the day, you have to have integrity with what you're designing. If you're a designer and you are in the sustainable fashion design realm, you have to have a mission, you have to have an ethos, and you have to have integrity with what you're creating. So whether it is one-off pieces that you're creating or you're creating the traditional maybe 2-3 seasons a year, just keep it to a manageable amount. Of course, we all want to grow, we all want to expand our businesses as much as we can, but we have to be mindful that we are able to control a lot of it, because if we get things go massive, we are just falling into the same trap as fast fashion, and we don't want that. I want to know what your definition of sustainable fashion is. I want you to comment down below what exactly is most important to you when you're either searching for a sustainable fashion brand or actually designing for a sustainable fashion brand. I want to hear it down below, because everyone has just different definitions, but I think a lot of these things that I'm talking about today are very overarching to everybody. The materials that we use are vital towards our sustainability in the fashion world, because we don't need any more polyester in this world. It just goes without saying that, you know, anything that's made from polyester actually comes from oil. So the less we use it and consume that, the better for ourselves as well, like for our human health, but also for the environment too, because we just don't need any more virgin materials. We have so much material in this world, whether it is already sitting in the landfill, it's sitting in someone's press with like, or wardrobe with loads of like too many clothes, or whether it is a fashion designer that just has rolls of dead stock material left over. We have plenty to keep us all going for a long time. So if you can find brands that are, you know, using dead stock materials or regenerating materials, which is amazing, because I love to see recycled materials, especially ones that are hard to, I suppose, repurpose at home. But if you can find brands that are doing that, amazing, chef's kiss. Go with them, they're amazing, because I think the more we give our money to these kind of brands that are trying to reduce the waste that's already there, that's where industry is going, in my opinion. And if you can't find those kind of brands, try and stick to healthy natural materials such as cotton, organic cotton hopefully, linen, hemp, bamboo, any of those kind of things. There's lots of beautiful cellulose materials that you can find these days as well, and make sure as well that when you're buying them that they're certified. I've got a list of all little certificates that you can look for when you're looking for your perfect natural material. Number 5 of the key things that I think are important for a sustainable fashion brand, and that is transparency. This one is so important, because we see nowadays with greenwashing, brands are just claiming they're sustainable and in reality they're absolutely not. So if you're looking for a brand that you think they are sustainable, make sure they have evidence to prove it. A really fantastic resource for you if you're looking up a brand is to use the Good On You app. amazing for giving you real in-depth but also kind of just easy to read, digestible information about brands. And they give a rating using smiley faces, which you like, and they give you lots of information whether, you know, these are a good actual company to buy from or not. You should be able to see on a brand's website where they're talking about their supply chain. Maybe they might list them. A lot of the time brands don't list their suppliers because they're afraid of competition. Sometimes they're just hiding their labor compliance issues. But if you can, and it is amazing if it does happen that they list their suppliers, amazing, because then you can even do your own further research. But a lot of the time we just don't have time to even research these things, so we just expect the brand to tell us that. Now, I don't expect every brand to be perfect. I really don't, because especially if you're going from a fast fashion model towards more sustainable practices, it's going to take a lot longer and it's going to be a lot harder to change those logistics towards something that's more sustainable. But if you're looking at a brand that is from the get-go sustainable, then definitely they should be clear about their ethos, their brand vision, where they're sourcing their materials, what type of materials they're using, and their labor policies. The more that you, the customer, demand to see these type of credentials from brands, the more they'll all actually do it. They have no problem in not telling anybody about any of these kind of things if nobody's looking for it. Okay, that's just more admin for them on their end to publicize this kind of information. But customers are changing. Customers expect more from their brands because it's not just a product you're buying anymore, it's a lifestyle. A lot of the time when you connect to a brand, you connect to their lifestyle, and the same for them with you. So if you expect more, they'll give more. Sustainable fashion brands look different to everybody. They can be upcycling brands, secondhand shopping brands, vegan and cruelty free, which can be problematic too. If you just look at Portugal, it's illegal to call fashion vegan anymore in Portugal, so be mindful of that one, because a lot of the time when you talk about vegan, it's actually plastic. Sustainable fashion can look different to everybody, and that includes with brands as well. So it could be upcycling, repurposing, hand-me-downs, okay? So even if you go to a clothes shop, you know, swap shop, do that. Secondhand shopping, even designer secondhand shopping. So if you're interested in learning more about sustainable fashion, then follow me on my journey, hit subscribe, but also follow me on my Instagram. I'm always on that, and I'm always up for a DM chat about what you're doing with sustainable fashion and what it means to you. So make sure you give it a follow, and be sure to check out my next video, which is defining fast fashion, which you can find in the description below.